Perhaps one of the things that we've come to study more, I think, in the last 30 years, in which, of course, so much interest has been devoted to feminism and to feminist interests in scholarship, is constructions of masculinity. In other words, the ways in which, in different ages, what it is to be a man changes. What it is to be masculine changes. And of course, one of the things that most interestingly has varied over the centuries is crying. I mean, weeping in many 12th century texts, for example, including some that are really about what we would now call soldiers and warriors. I mean, tears are very, very common, and for men. And of course, in Catholic tradition, the gift of tears is regarded as a grace. I mean, part of the unlooked for mercy of God, that you feel so much the pain of being a sinner that you feel what's called compunction, which is related to the word puncture. I mean, you feel it like a pinprick, and it makes you cry. And it's clear that there was, in the Middle Ages, I mean, a very strong, or there could be a very strong lachrymose, tearful reaction to music. And it is, of course, a very interesting and complex question. What was causing that? It's not for me sitting in this chair now to explain, if I could explain, the mystery of why it is that music moves people in the way it does, moves them to tears, moves them to all kinds of reactions. Clearly, in the Middle Ages, I suppose, people are experiencing something like what you and I would call the moving effects of music, which are inexplicable. But in addition, of course, they're sensing a Catholic guilt. I mean, they are sensing the painfulness of having been responsible for the excruciating death of Jesus of Nazareth, who'd done nothing to deserve it, indeed was totally sinless. I mean, indeed, such notions may sound now to all those who aren't believing Christians really rather odd. But the fact is, clearly, for 1,500 years, or a great deal more, in fact, of course, the notion that someone who had no cause to be tortured and killed was tortured and killed, and it's your fault. And that, as John Donne says in one of his wonderful poems, wilt thou forgive the sin where I begun, which was my sin, though it were done before. In other words, it was done by Adam, but nonetheless, it's still my sin. It's visited on me. And I think that causes a tearful reaction, or could do. And there are many references to it. And it's a fascinating question, as I keep saying, how that is like, say, the tearful reaction that occurred when Berlioz was conducting a particular opera, and one of the players simply burst into tears and had to be led out. Berlioz, led him out of the hall. Interesting, he had to lead him out. In the Middle Ages, of course, if anyone had burst into tears in the church, you wouldn't lead them out. On the contrary, you'd make as much of them as you could. So I think a lecture on tears is clearly essential, and I shall try not to burst in tears during the course of it.